Hello and welcome back. I've got my Bristol Castle out again. I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I'd ordered some Western tinplate coaches on eBay and that sadly they hadn't been delivered, so several weeks went by and they never were delivered, so I ended up having to go for the eBay refund, no communication with the seller. So eventually that was all hassle-free once I initiated it, but just a bit disappointing really. So then I found these ones a short time later. I got them cleaned up. I thought I'd better get them out for a run. I'm quite pleased with them. I think I prefer them than the super detail ones, to be honest. Let's have a quick look at those. So we'll get them off the rails and have a look later. But we've got this nice freight train here, running again with my birthday present. So that's running around with those 3D printed cable drums. Got the 3D printer printing a canopy at the moment. I did get around to drawing one, so we'll have a glance at that later. That's the second test print I'm making. So sort of a number of things gone on the railway really. So we'll just let those run in the background here. So I've got a couple of items here which came from Elaine this week. Quite pleased with these. So we'll have a glance at those in a second once we get these trains stopped. Let's have a look down here as well. So I also discovered a fault in the wiring. Well, it wasn't the wiring, it was one of the isolation tabs I'd put in behind that point there. So it turned out that this section of track was constantly live. I was trying to isolate a locomotive standing on there earlier in the week. So that caused a bit of confusion in the end. At first I thought I'd got the wiring underneath incorrect, but it turned out to be that the isolating tab I'd put in there, a homemade one, had slipped on the way in, and I'd never really, I suppose since I put it in, I'd never tried to isolate anything there, so that ate up a few hours, but this is all good fun. So where are we? There's the Bristol Castle coming around from my left. Let's see if we can bring that to a stop under the window here. Let's grab some control. Freight train coming in from my right. We'll grab that one next time around. So we'll just bring that gently into a stop. There we go. Let's see if we can catch up with the freight train, sorry. I think this type of locomotive was possibly primarily used for freight. I'm sure that somebody will let me know whether I'm correct on that or not. I suppose it could have easily been used for moving some coaching stock around, perhaps. So I'm very, very pleased with it. And I've got the 8F out there. I've got some brick wagons, which if we don't run out of time today, we'll try and get those on the move as well a bit later on. So let's see if we can get this brought gently to a stop here. There we go. And you hear the printer running in the background. So ideally we'd wait for that to finish, but they take so long to print and I'm so short of time at the moment. So these items came from Elaine. She's had loads of spares or projects listed on her website, and this is the second batch of items I've ordered in recent weeks. So this is, I was quite pleased with this. This is a spare chassis, running chassis for a Sedinadan. And it has a different drive gear on than the Sedinadan I have. But these are sort of just come up in the post this morning, so we'll just pop that on the rails and get that on there. And I think mine has got the older brass worm and brass gear, or certainly the brass worm, but a black plastic gear. So it'll be a bit more crude in the running department. Let's give that a little bit of power and see how we go with that. So why am I not running? Let's try that again. I'm going to get this in a second. So let's give that some power there. There we go. As I say, the wheels are not cleaned at all. I was on the right control and it is a bit stop-start, but I think there's nothing that's a bit of a clean and a general look over will sort out on that. So that one's for another day, but I just thought I'd show that. And then I've got this R59, which I think probably dates from the late 50s, this one. So it has got the lining on it. We are going to get this one out on the bench and have a look over it. So I bought this with a couple of ideas in mind, and one, I thought, well, while we keep making all this test work on the railway, we'll get one out, get one of these to go with those. Sorry, I'm just concentrating here. With those maroon suburban coaches over here. Let's just pan over here for a second. So I mentioned a couple of videos back we should perhaps have the black one out, but this I think is the perfect locomotive for it, provided we can get a little bit of smooth running out of it. It's sold as a project, and it was noted that it was noisy runner. It definitely needs a bit of a clean. Let's see if we can give some power on that one. Yeah, so it's definitely a bit on the hesitant side, that, isn't it? Let's give that another go. And the other way. Yeah. Doesn't like going backwards. Let's just grab that off the rails. So, it's definitely been handled quite a bit. Seen a bit of a life, but what I can see looking on the inside is looks like it's had a replacement motor, but definitely the wheels are a bit of a problem on there, so I think a good clean and then we'll see where we stand with it. So I think if we plan to get that apart on the bench in a moment, I think that is going to be the new sort of run around for the railway. I think despite being rather bruised and battered, it's just the job for what I need at the moment. So we'll have a quick look here. So there is a canopy that I drew. If you have a quick look at the insert picture, at the SketchUp drawing there, and let's just pick this up. So that was the first test print, and I thought I'd copy the original first, and then I'd make an adapted version. So it's going to stick. It's going to have an angle upwards, so we get some clearance. So, but I thought, well, I should probably get some that look like the originals, because I've got a couple of buildings which we could use those on as well. So then I have the option. So let's just pop that there for a second, and we'll grab this. So there's the original. Had to make a number of compromises because I can't print detail quite as. Let's see if we get some focus on it. I can't print the detail quite as fine as this moulded plastic, but from arm's length, viewing distance, I think that's going to be just the job. So we've got one with an angle on it on the printer at the moment. I'm unsure of the angle. I may change it, but ideally by the time the video is finished, perhaps we will be able to see that one. And I have got some yellow material to print these in coming in the post, so ideally by the next video we'll have some yellow canopies on the backs of this station here. Let's just run over here. So yeah, so it's on the back side of those station buildings, and that'll just tidy that up a little bit. So I'm quite looking forward to that. So we'll sort of jump over at the bench and get that R59 tank locomotive opened up and have a look at it. We can get a much closer look here. So you can see the lining has suffered a little bit over the years. It's of that sort of age where it sort of sticks to your fingers and pulls away. So we'll try and do our best not to touch that too much. But I think for the running around on the layout, this is going to be a pretty good locomotive, he says. Well, we shall see once we've had the thing apart and had a good look over it. But if you see those wheels are definitely a bit on the murky side, aren't they? So we could give that a bit of a clean. And the connection rod, or one of the rods on one side, let's have a look, is the wrong one. That one there, I think, is a later one because it's fluted. So as it happens, on the other run around, the green one, let's have a glance at that. Let's bring that into shot. This has the corresponding wrong, I get the word out, wrong rod on it. So that side looks like it all matches. They're all fluted on here. We'll get to the other side, and we've got a non-fluted one on there. So I think we'll have that one out of there. We'll swap it over with the one from the black locomotive. So that'll improve the appearance a little. So we'll just bung that to one side for now. So we're not going to do everything on camera. We'll have a bit of a look over it. and we'll decide what we're going to do, and we'll come back to it. Let's see if we can get that. Yeah, I think that's already undone. That the screw seems to have just held in. Let's see if I can. There we go. So we've got that away. Let's see if we can undo that. It's just held in by 2 prongs from the chassis into the back there. Let's get rid of that screw. There we go. Before we sort of drop that. There we have it. Let's have a look inside. So not too bad. Pretty sure it's not acetate. I think it's a polystyrene body. So there's not too much damage on it, apart from the loss of decals there. We've got made in England, holding it the wrong way up, of course, and we've got NewTri-ang. Perhaps we should turn that around. So I'm not going to over clean the body. I'm going to give it a light brush and just tidy it up that way, because I think if we put anything sort of damp or spirit or wet wipes on these decals, they're going to come away. Let me see if I can grab this very light brush here. So I think we'll do nothing more than just brush it over like that. But again, I'm going to try and keep away from the decals, and I'll do the rest of that off the camera. So let's just pop that to one side. Well, there seems to be something sort of stuck on there. I don't know whether that's a piece of paint that attached itself in the past, but perhaps we'll try and ease that away. So we'll pop that down in a place of safety, and then we'll have a quick look over this chassis. And I think that motor, if you look at those windings, that's a much later motor than the model, but it's probably been somebody's sort of plaything. It's been a part in the past, and this looks all sort of quite aged, doesn't it? So what I have noticed as well is the motion bracket here has broken. I do have a plan for that. I think I have a spare, but in the past what I've done is put a little plate across the top of there, bent down, and holds this into place, provided it's only broken in 2 places. That'll be quite a successful fix for that, I think. So let's see what we get when we add power directly to the motor. See if I can do this. And we'll just pop that onto the brush side. Yeah, so it sounds a little rough, doesn't it? So we'll just see if we can get a better look in there. So we've got that side. Definitely a little bit dry, isn't it? So let's pop those leads down. So again, it can be quite fiddly to get this little part out. If I can do that, there we go, that's come away. Sometimes that bit of solder on that tab there just comes straight off in your fingers. The solder gets dry over the years, the joints break away. I think, being that we can't really lift that up, we'll also run that through the magnetizer. So let's go ahead and see if we can undo that. Again, I'm having to not look at the camera while I do some of these things, so please excuse me if this runs out of shot. So that's come out of there quite nicely. There we go. Let's see if that motor will just release quite. There we have it. We'll just pop that off there. Yeah, they're falling away in my hands. There we go. So let's see if we can have a closer look at those. So they may need a little refinishing. I know some people don't like to do that, but I think if we flatten those off and reduce the contact area, and it could help reduce the friction on the motor as well. So both brushes sort of similar sort of wear on them. I don't think I can. Okay, keeping that in focus. Trouble is when I look down and bring that up, I can't tell whether I've lost the focus or not. So we'll give those a bit of a clean up as well. So let's have a look at this. So commutator there, definitely a bit on the murky side. So I'm going to actually we've got some of those cotton buds here. We'll just give a little bit of fluid on here. whoops, there's some magnetism in there, isn't there? So I'm just getting that out of shot there. So we'll just see if we can clean that up, each of the slots, see if we can pull some out with that. There, I think that's pulling tons out. We'll risk using that again. So we'll, yeah, so we've got quite a bit out there. Let's just pop that down and we'll get another one of these. There we go. I think I'm going to move that body out of the way just in case I get any of this fluid on there. So we'll give that a bit more of a clean over. And again, off camera, I'll do a little bit more of a neat and tidy job of that. But we'll get it cleaned up before it goes into the magnetizer. And then we'll just clean out those slots. Now we've got the thick of it out. There, so that's coming away quite nicely. Let's just wipe the end of that. So whilst I am touching the motor, I'm being quite careful not to exert too much pressure on those windings. Yeah, so you can see, let's just give that a wipe. And now we can just clean that out there, so that's going to help it. So I think if the carbon buildup gets too great in there, you end up, the motors tend to run a little bit warm. So again, off camera, I'll clean that up a little bit more, and we'll get it slotted in the magnetizer in a moment or two. So we'll just pop that down for now, and I am going to just take this opportunity to move this bodywork, this body shell, completely out of the way so we don't have a tragic accident with it. So let's have a look here. So I think, so it doesn't feel to be binding at all. So I think that's going to be quite nice. So we'll get that cleaned up. Let's take these bogies off here as well, the front and rear. Actually, that screwdriver is absolutely useless for that. Excuse me while I reach across and grab another one. So this has got a much finer blade on it. There we go. So the couplings on these need a little bit of reshaping. Whoops. I'll pull that one down. There, that motion bracket has just come away one side of it. So I think my trick of putting a little metal plate across the top of there is going to work really, really nicely. But the other one sort of staying in place. Let's get the bogie off the other end of the truck. Feel for that to come off the thread. There we go. So that collection plate on the bottom of these early ones is plastic. So that's quite nice. I'm going to see the wipers in there. So again, I think this one is going to benefit from a bit of a clean there as well. So we'll go ahead and take that one out as well, and just check the solder joint on behind that one as well. But I think probably we should take the valve gear off here as well. So otherwise we're going to get in a dreadful mess. So we'll attempt to do that on the camera, but let's have a look over these items we've just taken off here. So I'll pick this one up. Let's see if we can grab focus. So there we've got the Mark II style coupling. Plastic wheels, got a metal axle there, and these screws, they're shouldered. Quite lovely things in themselves. Let's see if we can keep focus on there. And there's a tiny little plastic insert in there, which I think is quite nice. So that sort of smooths it out a little. I think possibly on the later ones that might have been dropped at some point, but these early ones seem to have this sort of plastic sort of bush in there. So that makes it lovely and smooth. So let's pop that one down. Other one in similar condition here. Look at the Yeah, that's not going to be too reliable, is it? We should definitely get that one cleaned up a bit. I'm just going to grab something to put these items in. Excuse me, reaching out of shot here. So I think as we take these items off, instead of losing things, let's to pop them in here, because the way things are going, the time is marching on, and I may well have to break away from this evening. So we're marching on into Saturday evening, definitely beginning to feel hungry. So let's see if we can get that off there. Actually, I'm going to squeeze that wheel a little bit. There we go. So we'll just feel for that to drop off the thread. So I'm going to take that lower down, because these things, if they drop off, they're going to bounce, and they'll, well, you've seen the colour of my floor and the carpet. Take hours to find those. So we'll just grab that. So let's have a look at that. They don't seem to have corroded too badly, so we'll give that a light clean up with some petrol. Pop that in there. We'll get that one off there as well. All looks pretty good. And we've got the spacer, we'll take that out of there. And we'll get that connection rod off there. Let's have a look at the back side of that. Yeah, so no rust. So quite grimy on the ends there, but we'll get that cleaned up. Let's have a look at the other side. Let's see if we can encourage that one that one's a bit tighter. There we go, we've got that. So these are incredibly small, these screws. You wonder how they were ever manufactured. It's sort of the fineness of the thread is incredible. So probably way too fine to be able to keep focus on there. I don't know whether we can see that. So you can get reproductions of these. So there's I think is it Tri-ang Hornby spares have lots of these little screws and things. So we've got a little bit more sort of corrosion, sort of surface has been eaten away a little bit. So let's see if we can ease that out of there. So that come out of that motion bracket. There we go. This could get incredibly dull watching me dismantle this locomotive. Pull that off there, another spacer. And I don't know whether that's paint on here or whether that's corrosion. Difficult to tell. Let's have a look. Let's see, get that up a little. Sort of all of it seems to have taken a bit of a tarnish on it. Other sides sort of discoloured as well. So I think that'll go on the green one. We'll not worry about pulling the green one apart while we're looking at this. So if I get this spacer off here, and we'll get this rod off there. So ideally we're going to get away with this without having, whoops. So did I just leave a spacer there? I think I forgot to take a spacer off the other side. I wasn't paying attention. I'll see when I play back the video. So when you have a look at it, so let's have a look there. So quite free. And that's the sound of the wheel on the collection wiper, I think. Yeah, there we go. So we've dismantled the rest of it on camera. Let's see if we can get the I think we might leave that there. I don't want to break that on the way out, so it's not doing any harm. It's in good condition. Terribly dirty wheels. Let's just put a bit of fluid on another cotton bud. Let's have a look how that comes up. So I will clean these over. So that begins to lift off already, doesn't it? So, and then we'll give a go over with the glass fibre brush on these as well. So we'll better clean those up quite nicely like that. That screw was a lot stiffer to come out of there than I was hoping. So again, we'll pop that down here. There we go. And the gear doesn't look to be too worn away either. There we go. We'll pop that one on there. Let's see if we can just ease this out Again, I don't want to take this off unless it has really come away. I'm going to put this screwdriver down. So you can see that orange wire running through there. Let's just ease that down a little bit so we can... There we go. So we should be able to see the axles there. Maybe some of the later ones had the sort of fiberboard collection plate, and the wheels were through the chassis. I'm gonna when we break off the video here, I'm gonna have a look at another one and see if that's the case. But yeah, we'll be able to get the wheels really nicely cleaned. Let's have a look at that. I'll just whip that out of there. Yeah, so that's definitely going to improve the pickup, isn't it? Not too bad. So I'm very encouraged by this. So I'm going to make sure the wheels go back in the axles they came from, the slots they came from. But that's the connection I was worried about down there. I think we might be in good shape there. So if we do need to resolder that, we just need to pull that phosphor bronze strip out of there. It slides in the side there. So if you try and solder that while it's in place, you're going to damage that. So we're Sunday morning now. I've just come back to it a bit earlier. I did get that 3D printed item done. It's on the station there. I'm quite pleased with it. I think it serves the purposes I was after. Although the sunlight is a little bright this morning, but we'll have a closer look at that when we jump to the other side. I did try and print another one just to stand in the station until I got some yellow PLA coming in the post next week, but I stuck it on to print. I thought it had attached to the bed. It seemed to have attached quite nicely, and then it has detached itself when I came back to check it an hour later, sadly. So I couldn't get involved in another one of those last night, so I left it. I've come back to this morning, fiddling with it. The wire did detach itself from here, so I've just soldered that back on. So ideally we'll get that back together a bit later. All these things end up taking more time than you think, and life has got to go on around it. So I'm going to break from this again now in a moment, and I'm going to go out for the morning, and we'll come back to this afternoon. So you can see that's all that's cleaned up really, really nicely. Got those axles all clean, all the old grime out of there. That drive gear really is quite nice. So we'll get that back together. Motor, as you saw, I had that in the magnetizer. I have checked the motor over. I don't know whether you noticed in the footage before, I hadn't really spotted it by eye, but when you get it up big on the screen, it looks like somebody's. It looks like the wire's been twisted back together, roughly where my fingernail is. I don't know whether I can get focus much closer than that. All neat and tidy. Check the resistance on the motor. It's I think is it 12.6 across two of the segments, and 13.1 across the other. So we'll see how the motor runs once we get it back on the body. It sort of runs all right. I've given that a test over, but we'll see if that's a problem, and if it is, we'll change it. So a number of other things to do. We're going to clean all these bits up and get them back on. So I'll go out for the morning, and I'll get this all back together. I'll get the motor back on there, get this plate back on, and then we'll have a look at it, and we'll add a few of those extra pieces. The the base plate for the model, I was right. I do have one. I haven't dug the engine out, but I had a look at the service sheets. So this service sheet from 1969 indicates a slightly different design of the chassis, where the axles run through the chassis block. There's an older version which looks a bit more like the model we're playing with here. That one's got the soot smoke unit in it. This one's dated. What have we got there? 61. Yeah, 1961 on that one. I think we've got a slightly earlier one here as well. No smoke unit. We've got see-through wheels on that one. Let's have a look at that. So again, it's the same design as we're playing with today. We've got solid wheels on this one, sorry. And we've got the date on here. What are we? 1955 on there, I think. Yeah, 55. So yeah, so there was a slight modification to the model over the years. I think the last one I was playing with the more traditional style of base plate. I'm not sure whether they swapped from one to the other. I think there's a couple of other models where the wheels release out of it quite happily when you take the base plate off. It's sort of, it has its plus points and it has its minus points, I suppose. Just getting the valve gear back on the one side here, and we'll get the other side sorted out in a moment. So let's just nip this up very gently. Don't want to overdo that. So I think that's looking all right. So I have ended up swapping the motor out of that. I think if we had a look at the motor earlier, I don't know why I didn't spot that there was a bend in one of the pole pieces along here. So I don't know whether it was immediately obvious or I was just looking for other things at the time, but I got the motor on and it got it running. Runs really nicely in the one direction and it just hates running in the other direction. So whoops, get that out the other way. So I had another motor which didn't have a brush spring or brushes, so we just swapped that out. So a much older motor. The segments read sort of 7.1. I don't know what they're supposed to read, but I think the general rule of thumb is that they all should be similar. But I think the windings on this one potentially are a different weight. And they certainly look different to the windings on this older motor. So maybe there are different readings for different ages of motor or different materials used. So this one seems to run really nicely forwards and backwards. Slightly different noise in each direction, but that's fairly normal. And the motion bracket I've got in here, I just put this little piece of bent metal in there. That's one of those sort of phosphor bronze type plant labels I've bent into position. And because the motion bracket had split sort of neatly in two parts rather than multiple parts, I think it's going to be quite safe like that. So it's fairly secure, and that just sort of holds it down into place. Sort of get a few more years use out of it rather than having to put a replacement on there. The other problem I had with it was this plate. When we had this all off before, and I did end up soldering it back on. It'd come off through handling and so on. It was causing a short. When I put it all back together, it kept shorting out, so couldn't see anything with the wheels shorting. And I thought, well, maybe it's the solder joint it's making contact with there. So I had that out, altered it, put some nail varnish on around various bits in there to try and insulate it. And it wasn't that. If you look at the insert picture, I'll just poke that scalpel in the slot that phosphor bronze strip sits in, and that was making contact with this screw. I'm not sure how that's happened. So it wasn't a permanent contact. So when it was sort of intermittent, but if you held it on there, you'd get a short. So that was took longer to identify than it should. I haven't come across that before. So if you look at this other picture here, I've just taken a little bit off that phosphor bronze strip, so it sits away from the screw. So hopefully we won't suffer from that again. But I'm quite pleased with that so far. I've left all this in. I resoldered these joints. Through the handling, they've all just come apart. Perhaps I should have freshened up the wiring, but I think we'll stick with it. We'll pop those down there. Sorry, that down there. So the front bogie and rear bogie there, I've reshaped the couplings, given the wheels are clean. One of them does have a bit of metal detail missing. Not that one, it's that one. See there should be a matching part like that on there, but I think because we're just using this model for testing and general, perhaps track cleaning and so on, I think it's not really. I don't think it's worth the effort of searching for another one to replace it with. I don't think it's going to affect, the overall operation of the locomotive. So I think we'll get those back on, get the valve gear on the other side of it, and then we'll pop it on the track. We'll give it a go, see how it runs. I've finally got it on the rails. I have to admit I have changed the motor. Let's just have a quick look at that. Let's see if we can roll that forward and then roll backwards. But the other motor was just ended up being very, very noisy, especially when they got the top on it. It was quite an alarming noise. It ran, but it was just not quite right. So I pinched a motor from my the previous locomotive I had for sort of track cleaning and stuff out of this rather beaten up diesel shunter. So I've had the motor out of that. So we'll deal with that another time. But I'm sure we can find another motor to pop in there. But I'm quite pleased with that now. So I have had to try with the body shell on, and it does run really nicely. So let's just get that a little bit more. Let's go for a little bit of power forward and a little bit backwards and a lot backwards. I think we're probably going to run out of time and not be able to have a look at the 8F today. So sadly, we'll get the body shell on there. Let's just have a look at these coaches before I forget them. The Western coaches. Let's give that Bristol Castle a bit of power. We'll bring that around. We're sort of rolling into Sunday evening now. It's all been quite good fun. Other things happening through the day. Been out this morning. Had some lunch with my family. Got a bit more of this done this afternoon. So it's been quite a nice weekend, really. So there are the coaches, tin plate ones. I'm unsure of the age. I already had the restaurant. I didn't have the brake and the composite. Let's just pop that off the rails for a second. I'll probably regret this. I'll never get it back on. So this one has the tin plate wheels, the metal wheels. So I have had to take those ones out. The wheel hangers were a little bit bent, so I straightened those out. Got that running much nicer. Okay, so it's got a lovely rattle about it. Definitely been in and out of the toy box. Let's pop that back on the rails for later use. Let's see if we can get that on there. I haven't picked the best place to do this. Let's put this on the straight. There we go, that lovely sound. I do like the sound of these metal wheels on the rails. So the restaurant I already had, but I don't think we've seen it, so let's just have a quick look over it. See if I hold that there. We'll try and continue to keep focus on it. Plastic wheels, much quieter, although an enormous amount of friction on these, I think. Personally, I think there's less friction on the metal wheels, but I think the quietness is the appeal to these, and why it probably caught on. Also, they could be used on two rail, of course. Let's see if we can get that one hooked up. Are we all on there? We're not all on there. There we go. I haven't chosen the best place to do this. I need to stay a little bit further away to keep that in focus. And here we go. Here's the brake. So I was quite pleased with these. They weren't terribly much. I think the pair were 14 or 15 pounds inclusive of the postage in the end. So yeah, similar price to the ones that didn't show up. I mean, I don't think they're not terribly special, but I thought they just probably looked better with the Bristol Castle than the slightly longer ones. I don't know, that's just my opinion. But then again, my railway, so I can have whatever I like, really, within reason. So lots of things I would like, but probably not going to get. But yeah, it seems that those things. Why have we got no power here? It's like the NewTri-ang short coaches, I think. Make a really nice length. There we go. Just sitting in a dodgy place. Perhaps time for a little bit of wheel cleaning. Have we hooked up there? We'll get those ones on. Sorry, I'm not pointing in the right place. Are we all in place now? Yeah, we're all in place. So what I think I'll do we'll jump the other side. I'll put the top back on that, and we'll pick up those suburban coaches over there, have a quick look at the 3D printing project. Still some work to be done on that, and we'll have a bit of fun with it. So we'll just get the Bristol Castle back round to the other side of the railway. Terrific sound coming under there. And then we'll have a go with that tank locomotive. We'll get those maroon coaches there. Age appropriate couplings and everything. So let's get this around here. There we go. Back where we started with those. So let's swap controls. So yeah, we're probably finished with this one for now. So I could have gone the other way around, but if I went the other way around, that's how you end up with your feet, cable wrapped around your feet. So we'll grab this. Sounds like somebody sneezing outside the door there. So let's get some power on here. So that is so much quieter. Just have a look at that little bit of footage there. So it did run. It was quite controllable, nice slow speed, but it was just so noisy. So it's just an especially noisy motor. So, but it performed and did all the stuff on the bench. Not too much current draw or anything like that. So let's back that through there. There we go, and then we'll close those again. And then what have I got? I've got a yellow one I need to change. We've got to change this one here. Goes straight. And let's get this round here. So I've already got the cables in the wrong place. So let's run forward with that. Probably shouldn't have stopped there. Whoops. So I've just caught went to put that down and caught the switch with my thumb. Forever doing that. It's just sort of absent-mindedness. So we'll just throw that again. And then we can get this to roll backwards. Still, it got me off the points, didn't it? Sounds convincing. Couplings all behaving themselves. Yeah, let's just stop that there. And I'm just going to attend to this point here, I think. So let's throw that one. Wrong direction. Gets me every time, that one, because that's the main route there. So let's try and encourage the camera to look upwards a little bit more. Sorry, I'm having trouble with that. Let's encourage it down. I've knocked something while I was talking, and it's not doing what I expected it to do. So let's bring this round. I think the points are all good. This will bring us round, and we can climb the elevated section. Actually, why don't we set the Bristol Castle running in the background? We could just leave that running away in the background, couldn't we? Let's see if that settles out all right. And we'll get this to run. So I think this is going to be a great run around for the railway with testing stuff. A lot nicer looking than that dodgy old blue diesel shunter. Slight pause there. Let's see if that comes around. Actually, I've got to stop it there and change some points. Let's make those go curved. I should have left those curved, perhaps. So let's give some power on there. Coming through the tunnel, through the points. Let's see if we can get this to climb. Almost on top of each other there as they came around, so let's slow that down and bring that into the station. There we go. So I'm just going to put the controls down there for a second. So I've been having a fiddle this afternoon, and I think I'm going to have to make the large canopy as well. I've devised a plan for that. So let's have a quick look at this canopy over here. So I think that's the one we saw earlier on. That one runs straight. That's quite a nice item. And then that's the curved one we had a glance at just a few, well, yeah, it was just a few moments ago, several hours ago now. But I think I'm going to make an adjustment to that, and we'll have a look at that next week. So we should be able to get, ideally we'll have some yellow material to print that in, and that'll improve the look of the station, I'm hoping. So might not be strictly Tri-ang, but I think it's going to really look the part. Let's give that Bristol Castle a tiniest bit more power. There we go. I think we're ready for wheel cleaning on that one, to be honest. So let's switch the points here and get the EMU down. There we go. So ideally that EMU will just move away. And we'll bring this down onto level ground. Through it goes. Right, we'll get this into the passing loop round here. So let's we'll bring some control over it and bring it gently to a stop. There we have it. So I've got to put the controls down, and let's throw the switch for that. So that's this one. Curved. Let's bring that into the loop. The sun's getting quite low now. We're getting on for 7 o'clock Sunday evening. It's what are we? Beginning of August, I think. We're the first Sunday in August. Let's check that. So yeah, marching on. Now, let's switch the points here, then we can bring the other suburban train around. I don't know whether we can get high enough and have a look here. Curved there. Couldn't find the switch. I'm looking where the camera's pointing, and then trying to feel for where my hand's playing with the switches. So let's give that some power. We'll bring that around. We'll have to remember to stop it on the next, just before the next straight section. There we go. And I'll just reach back here. We'll switch the points. Remember to turn the controller in the other direction now. Yeah, so I think hopefully by next week I'll definitely have an idea of how those canopies are going to look. I'm going to say they might not be strictly Tri-ang, but it's all sort of in the spirit. And I think that's all we really need. Just like the spans for the elevated section. They're all sort of just good fun, really. So I didn't really know where I was going to go with this railway. So I'm just going to bring that to a stop there. And grab hold of the Bristol Castle. We'll get the controls for that, and I think we'll bring that to a stop as well. I think that's probably it for today. Again, I don't try and make these videos to a time, they're just sort of made, they evolve. And what happens, happens, really. Yeah, I think light's under there. On the list of things to do, so let's just bring that to a stop. There we go. Let's pop the controls down. So I'm quite pleased with that. So sort of slight sort of struggling with the motor a little bit, but I've got one that now sounds really, really nice in there. So I think I'm going to use that for the railway. You know, track cleaning, testing stuff, and we'll retire the blue diesel shunter. I think this will do the job. We'll just use it for what it is, not be too precious about it. But yeah, I think it looks quite splendid with those. I did say a couple of weeks ago I should get those out. So let's see if we can just make that freight train with the cable drums go, just to say goodbye. And thanks again for watching. Goodbye now.